Okay, so good afternoon and welcome. My name is Felicia Escover, and on behalf of the Economic Development Team, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about preparing for the holiday season. So it's all around us, and so this is really about how we can get prepared, not just this holiday season, but beyond that also. Before we get started, we just have a couple quick polls to get a sense of who you are and where you are in your planning journey. So this first poll, hopefully you can see it. How holiday ready are you? Are you feeling ready? Are you working on getting ready or not quite ready? And that's why you're here. So go ahead and pick which one applies to you. Give you a few seconds and then we'll share where we are. All right, 5 more seconds to take part in the poll before we share the results. Okay. So hopefully you can see that. It looks like we are working on getting ready. And so that's probably why you're here today. So with that said, let me get to the next poll to get a sense of who is in the room. Okay, our second one. What is your primary industry? So where do you work? Are you working in retail, food and beverage, health and fitness, or another area? Got other. And if you wouldn't mind, if you selected other, just to put in the chat what industry you work in, so we make sure we give you some tips related to that specific area. Okay, it looks like everyone so far is other. Okay, so we unpoll. So it looks like we're all in the other. So I'm curious, where are you working here? I'm gonna unmute Yang so you can share with us.
Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I'll start very quickly saying that I'm an artist. And I will also say that I've noticed the chat is disabled, which is probably why we weren't able to type into the box to let you know what industry we're in. So I don't know if other participants are having that problem, but I just wanted to bring that up really quickly.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I wonder, let me check the settings. I might have to go online for a second and go ahead and do that. So, but while we do that, I'm going to just kick off the rest of the intro, hand it over to Mike, and then go on the back end and make sure we get the chat working. So today we plan on talking about consumer behavior and what things have changed since COVID. We'll talk about some of the key challenges in marketing right now, and most importantly, how we're going to address those with some really specific strategies and a checklist to leave you with. And then we're also going to be introducing this new innovative program that's going to help support our Dublin-based businesses. So we're really excited about it. So we'll share more. I know I'm leaving you on a little bit of a cliffhanger, but we're going to share more in just a bit. I'm going to work on getting the chat and Q&A enabled so that you can ask questions as they come up, and we'll either try to address them while I'm interviewing Mike or afterwards when we just open it up for general Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to pass things over to our accomplished speaker. We invited Mike to join us. He has over 35 years of experience in the marketing industry and has done some pretty impressive things. And so we're excited he's here with us. So Mike, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure, be happy to. Hello, everybody. I'm really pleased and thrilled that I was invited to address you and to potentially help you as you plan for your holiday season and beyond. We are living in very unique times, unprecedented times, given what the last 3 years have brought upon us. forcing us to behave in certain ways that literally change things overnight. And that has had serious ramifications for all industry, but it's hit small businesses and particularly local businesses probably harder than any other. So what I'd like to do, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself, is talk about that and talk about how my experience might help you navigate through these challenging times in a way that can even help you grow your business at the expense of your competition and by building stronger customer relationships. As Felicia noted, I started my career a long time ago, probably before many of you were born. I started my career at Procter & Gamble, which is a kind of the mecca of marketing, and where I got my MBA and PhD in marketing. And then I went to work in the travel industry and wound up being one of the original architects of what today is our modern day loyalty programs. I led one of the teams that built the Continental One Pass program, which was a revolutionary program at the time, now part of Mileage Plus. And then I was hired to become the chief marketing officer at Hilton Worldwide and built the Hilton Honors program literally from the ground up. And that was a very unique program because it was the first program that was self-liquidating, because unlike airlines that own all their planes, hotels don't own all their properties. And so we needed to create a system that made it equitable for everybody to participate. And so our resorts wouldn't get slammed when everybody wanted to redeem their rewards there. I subsequently went on to join EA Sports after my first startup and ran that business on a worldwide basis. And then I got the real startup bug and did 2 successive startups. And I was running a company more recently when I tried to redeem some miles on United, and even with 450,000 miles in my account, I couldn't get what I wanted when I wanted it, and I realized something was desperately broken, and that's what led me to start thinking about a kind of completely re-engineering the relationship between customers and the brands, merchants, and stores they buy from. And especially now with the advent of social media, and recognizing that there's so much more a customer can do to add value to a business that extends beyond just making a purchase. And that's what led us to here.
Yeah, thank you so much for that great intro, Mike. Yeah, you've kind of done it all, worked at these really large corporations who specialize in marketing. So really great to have you and your perspective here today. And so as Mike mentioned, we are going to talk about the holiday season, but then also broader than that, just how can we grow business. And so with that said, we're going to start talking a little bit about the customers that you all are serving in this community. And so our next question for Mike is, why is understanding and staying close to the customer so important in today's market?
Sure. So as a merchant, you face more challenges today than any of your predecessors in history. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is you are dealing with the most diverse base of customer segments ever. Everything from what's called the greatest generation and baby boomers all the way down to millennials and Gen Z. And the challenge there is they all have very different needs, expectations, and act very differently. Baby boomers tend to be very brand loyal. Millennials and Gen Z aren't brand loyal at all. And so really understanding them will be the best possible way of ensuring that your merchandising strategy, your menu strategy, whatever that might be, is relevant across the board. Second is a real challenge, which is there's so much competition for a customer's attention today that breaking through is becoming harder and harder. And so knowing what your customers are interested in beyond your specific area of whether it's food or products is important, so you know where you might find them and where you might be able to reach them, not necessarily in the right context. And then third, and very importantly, is there's research now that suggests that consumers are acting differently than the way they intend at times. And so they may say, I'm going to do this and wind up doing something completely different. And it's happening more and more frequently, which is making it hard for big companies to keep track of what their customers really want, because the data they get is typically institutionalized, takes long to deliver. And that's an area where you have an advantage because you see your customers on a regular basis and have an opportunity to check in with them and understand what might have changed, what they're interested in today, what their plans are, and then keeping your finger on the pulse of each of those customers so you're in a better position to understand what changes might be happening well in advance of the bigger competition out there. So those three are really the most important elements about why staying close and knowing your customer is going to pay dividends, especially for small businesses going forward.
Thank you, Mike. And yeah, I'm sure that some of the folks on the call can relate to experiencing some of that, the changing expectations, the hyper competitive market, and then customers not always acting consistently in a way that we can kind of predict things well. So other than these kind of general changes that have just come about recently, how has COVID in particular affected some of the ways that our customers behave, especially as it relates to our small businesses?
So as you all know, the shelter-in-place order and essentially forcing businesses that put people in close proximities to close was catastrophic for a lot of businesses, but particularly small businesses that really operate on thin margins and count on their customers coming back again and again. Not only was that difficult, but what it created was a paradigm shift that we've never experienced before. Literally, everybody in America changed their behavior overnight, and they went from going out to staying in. And so that change in behavior combined with the time that those policies were in place created one of the greatest enemies to any marketer, and that's habit. People became habituated. And also because of the media, people became afraid. And so as we started to come back, I think a lot of businesses made the mistake of thinking, well, I'm just going to use my standard strategies to try to get people back with discounts and things like that, when what they were really needing to fight against was habituation or breaking habits and fear. And if you talk to any marketer, those are two of the hardest things to address unless you have better knowledge of your customers and know what it takes. So for fear, you build trust. And that's an opportunity that local merchants have, because you have day-to-day contact at a human and individual level with many of your customers. And so oftentimes a big company saying they've done something to address an issue versus a store owner having a conversation with a customer and showing them what they've done to make their environment safe is order of magnitudes different in not only impact, but effect. And so those are the areas where I think small businesses can really excel and start getting people to bounce back, at least with them, in a way that will produce the kind of that will not only restore the business you once had, but hopefully grow it as word of mouth goes around about how much you care and how effectively you are addressing the issues that are really creating issues for them, and not just discounting or taking a blanket approach to the problem.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, and I hear you talk about how our habits and lifestyles, just the way we do things, have changed. And one of the other kind of big challenges is e-commerce, and how a lot of people have transitioned to using online for purchasing, especially during that time of fear when folks were staying home for the most part. So can you talk about how small businesses can address and compete with some of those big retailers and e-commerce markets?
Absolutely. So when COVID pointed us to online businesses as a substitute, and then convenience players like Instacart and others, Grubhub and some of these intermediaries, they didn't do small business any favors. Whether those entities were impacting your margins or threatening to steal your customer relationships, that became an issue. The other thing is that online businesses and the mega retailers like Walmart and Amazon have some intrinsic advantages. They offer convenience. They offer broader inventory and selection because they don't have to carry the same kind of inventory you guys do. And they typically have a cost advantage because they don't have physical rent that they have to pay and the type of merchandising they have to do. But there are things you have they don't, which you can really leverage and leverage very strongly in a way that I think will appeal to a local market. And we'll talk about those next. But I think in this case, it's what an old saying from Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, which is know thy enemy and know thyself. And knowing thy enemy, and in the case of a Walmart or a chain restaurant, for example, or an online business or those delivery services and where they excel, and then knowing yourself and where you can fight them head to head, perhaps by doing your own local area delivery service, and where you can use advantages that you have over them to not just level the playing field, but give you an intrinsic competitive advantage in your local market area.
So let's dig more into that, and really, how can our small businesses start to address all of the challenges that you brought up so far, the changing expectations, competing with these convenience players, and how can we build those sustainable relationships that you alluded to earlier?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, and I see this in the broader context of talking to big brands and some of these large retailers, is the single biggest complaint they have is that they're so focused on rewards and discounts that they have forgotten how to treat an individual customer. You know, there's a lot of talk about personalization, but that has largely gone unfulfilled. And if you notice today how much technology exists between the customer and the ultimate merchant for some of these big players, you feel as though you're so detached and you can't contact a human being even if you wanted to. It is physically impossible to reach a human being at Google, as an example. There's no phone number. There's no way you can reach a human being, which I find ludicrous. Personal relationships are something small businesses can leverage that can be extremely powerful. And the reason why is strong customer relationships are built on two key criteria, let's call it. One is what I call the rational criteria. Do you have the product I want? Is it there at a fair price? Is it available? Can I get it today? All of the things kind of your rational brain processes. But a huge part of the decision is emotional, is, how do you treat me while I'm at the store? If I have a problem, do you solve it? Do you treat me as an individual or just as a customer? Do you know my name? Do you use my name? And those things are frankly more important in terms of building customer loyalty than any of the rational criteria. It's essentially a question of what do I get for doing business with you, and how do I feel about doing business, or how does doing business at this store make me feel? And the emotional part of the equation is an area where you small businesses can excel. One very easy way is recognizing your customers for the contributions they make. We have something called basically an unanticipated reward, where you basically give your customers a gift. Doesn't have to be extravagant, but just a token of saying, I really appreciate the business you've given me, and I want to show that appreciation with this small token, or this whatever that might be. That is such, we call it's actually part of our loyalty strategy because it's so effective when done on a genuine and non-programmatic basis. You can also take advantage of things that e-commerce and bigger businesses can't. In the case of e-commerce, there are certain products and services that are impulse driven, or where when you want to make a purchase, you want instant gratification. If you're buying a video game, you want it now. if you have to go out to a party and want to buy a new dress or a new coat, you want it now. If you try to buy it through online, they're not going to get it to you in time, and you're not going to be able to touch and feel it. So it's using your senses in a physical environment is something you really can't do in an online environment. And then on the big box side, how often do you get genuine service at those big boxes? How often can you find somebody to help you at those big boxes? Research has shown that customers today are as likely to want to be self-reliant as they want the stores to hold their hand and help them with their selections and guide them to the right places of where to find what they need. And so yeah, the online sector is great at self-sufficiency, but you can really excel in the hand-holding part, which is becoming increasingly more important. As a matter of fact, human contact has increasingly become more important as people tire of dealing with automated attendant and AI that has no empathy and can never contextualize the reason for a return, for example, or a particular issue you had with something you bought. Whereas an individual can not only weigh the issue, but understand the context behind it and typically provide you with a solution you're going to be happy with that will stay with you over time. And so it's going back to what Jan Carlson, many years ago, he was a CEO of Scandinavian Air Service. He called across the whether it's a retail experience, a dining experience, he called them moments of truth. And they are opportunities to make an impact with a customer that can bond them to you for life. And while those are fewer and far between these days, they're still there. And the only way to exploit them is if you recognize when they occur, and that takes a human being actually being part of the process, which is something you guys can do that the kind of the automatons out there can't.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, and I love that concept of the moment of truth. And I think that really, to your point, goes to building that those sustainable relationships. And speaking of building relationships, can you talk a little bit about Tuesday night and the Dublin marketplace?
Sure. So given what's happening in the US and how and the uncertainty with the economy and the need to bounce back from COVID, we reached the company that I run had built a large US platform that to help big brands like Coca-Cola and T-Mobile and Chevron and others strengthen their relationship with their customers. And we realized that while we could do that on a broader basis, the places that needed our help even more were local communities that were looking to find ways to not only jumpstart their economy, but to help their merchants get back and beyond the pre-COVID levels by better understanding their customers and forming a sort of partnership with them, where as the business grows, both benefit mutually. And that's why we created what we're calling the Dublin Marketplace, powered by Reach Local. It is a very unique platform that is predicated, that works differently for you than it does for your customers. For you, it's essentially a relationship management and relationship catalyst platform that allows you to maximize the value of each of your customers, and by doing so allows you to acquire new customers more efficiently and effectively. For your customers, it's a mobile app, a single mobile app that allows them to manage all of their local merchant relationships and maximize the value they derive from those merchants in return for the value they add or contribute to those merchants. It is really a partnership that is driven by the growth of the merchant for the benefit of both merchant and customer. And that's why it is truly a partnership. What makes it unique is the fact that it is simple and easy to use. Participation for both merchants and customers is completely frictionless. Reach does all of the work. And so a customer, all they have to do is look for opportunities in their mobile app based on the merchants they've chosen to engage with. And they can earn a common currency across all of the merchants, which based on consolidation can really pile up. The merchant benefits because every action that provides compensation, that compensation is determined by the merchant, and the compensation provides value. And payment or remuneration doesn't take place until after value has been delivered. So it is really, instead of using discounts and rebates or buy one, get one free, which can significantly impact your margins, this is all about getting your customers to act in a certain way that is profitable for you, and then rewarding them after the fact based on some percentage of what that incremental value is worth. And so it's truly a win-win. It is performance driven, it's sustainable. And because both win, there's tremendous opportunity to expand and build on it based on what your growing needs are. The other thing is that it's flexible, so it can accommodate any of your marketing activity without you having to change a thing. And that's one of the beauties, is there's no new technology, no integration, nothing is required. Everything we do in the background on a completely transparent basis, so you just get the benefit.
Thank you, Mike, for that overview, and we'll definitely be in touch with our local businesses soon with additional information. Since our agreement with Reach was adopted on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, we're going to be working to get this program launched in early December, so in time for the holiday season. So we'll be in touch with more information about that. But it's definitely one of the tools you can use to help build relationships with different customers, and really just help this holiday season and beyond. So what else can our local businesses do in addition to Reach, which is coming up, and some of the other strategies you shared? Like, what are some of those takeaways that you really want people to leave here with?
So, in terms of the holiday season, which is really what's right around the corner, we've done some research in terms of what are people thinking about during the holiday season, and how can local businesses take advantage of some of these things, which are very top of mind, very relevant to them. And we came up with a few that I think are worth a quick conversation to see if they spark any ideas. I've got some examples, but they're just examples. It's more in the spirit of what we're trying to do here. The one thing that people talk about all the time is during the holiday season, they are badly pressed for time, whether it's because people are coming over, they have to plan meals, the kids are out of school. It is one of those situations, as they said in one of the Batman movies, so much to do and so little time. So how can you as local merchants buy more time for your customers so they wind up buying more from you? And so examples, if you're a restaurant, what about testing a family meal program where essentially you can create a meal for a family so they don't have to cook that day, and whether they eat it in the restaurant or you can package it for them to take it home. It saves them a few hours in a night, and maybe they use that hour to shop more for the benefit of not only your location, but other locations within the Dublin area. There's also, and again, we can think about other ways to save time. If you're a dry cleaner, you can think about ways that you can potentially do some alterations or fix some add buttons up and down the kind of the value chain to see how else you can help somebody, so they don't have to stop at 2 or 3 different places. They can just use you to save time. So and we're happy to work with you to find ways of using this theme to build promotional opportunities that work for everybody. There's also a very strong spirit of giving over the holidays. And in today's world, oftentimes that spirit of giving focuses on those less fortunate or those that have need. So one of the strategies you might want to consider is including a charity or local organization that's important to the Dublin area, and making a small contribution based on every purchase in the month of December, as an example. If you have a strong relationship and your and you have a good overall product, there's a ton of research out there that's saying adding that cause-related element at a time where people have giving at the top of their mind can really drive business, because people feel compelled to share their own happiness and their own the gifts that they've been given in life with those less fortunate, and that could be a very effective strategy. That's a win-win-win. The customer wins, you win, and the less fortunate win as well. Focus on the family. There's going to be one of two things taking place. Either your customers are going to be out of town with their family somewhere else, or there's going to be an influx of families coming into the Dublin area to spend the holidays with the family here. So how can you take advantage of that? What can you do to make those families that are staying with relatives more comfortable? Can you provide group deals or some kind of mechanism that encompasses the whole family, or an activity or meal that encompasses the whole family? Again, that also might be able to save them some time, but also is a way of keeping them and bringing them together, which is the whole reason behind the holidays. And then the last small bit of advice that I might give is there's strength in numbers. And so thinking about promotions with one or two other local merchants is likely to drive more business to all three of you than a single promotion on your own would drive to you. And so if there are businesses that make sense, where you might go to dinner and a movie, or shopping and a meal, or where there's an adjacency and you're really close to one another, and you get the person to visit both stores, that might be a really good way of not only pooling your resources, but taking advantage of numbers for mutual benefit. And fortunately, Reach has the capability to help you with that in a very compelling way, and in a fun way for the customer.
Thank you, Mike. Those are really great tips. And for those of you who weren't able to kind of write all of that down, we will be sending out a worksheet so that you have just some highlights on different strategies to try out this holiday season. So at this point, we're going to open it up to Q&A. So feel free to send a question through the Q&A or via the chat, and we'll go ahead and address those questions. But to start things off, I have a question for Mike. So you've worked for big companies like Procter and Gamble and Hilton, and how are those big businesses gearing up for the holidays? And are there any tips or strategies that the small businesses here in Dublin can take from those larger companies?
One of the things that, and I'll just be really candid, one of the things that surprised me about large companies, and this isn't a universal, is how inertially driven they are, and how the ability to innovate is a challenge because of the scope of the business. You know how it says it takes a long time to turn an aircraft carrier, and unfortunately that's what happened. If you look about how the hotel business tried to recover from COVID, they probably did everything wrong. They should have been focused on allaying people's fears, on making them feel safe, and not going out with massive discounts, because the discounts fell on deaf ears. And so I think really, if I went back to my days at Hilton, which were a while back, where, as an example, by listening to customers and trying to understand, we realized that customers, we had a really bad period during one winter, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong. We had a mystery shopper that the hotel's performance data was all right. What we realized was people were coming into our hotels after long weather-related airline delays, angry. And that anger permeated into their stay, because we didn't kind of create a segmenting point of saying, this is no longer that part of that experience. This is a new experience. What can we do to help you? And that simple act of stopping when a person to check in and say, how was your trip in? Or did you experience any issues getting here, letting them unload, and then actually giving them something for their troubles, we went from being down 13% to being up 19% after doing that. And that was, again, just going back and listening to the customer and asking the right questions. So I think, candidly, what those big companies wish they could do today is have the same kind of personal contact and relationship with customers, which after they've gotten to a certain point is no longer feasible for them, which is why they've had to adopt technology, which just oftentimes feels incredibly impersonal and at worst, totally frustrating when you're trying to address an issue.
Yeah, so in that way, it almost seems like our small businesses have a competitive advantage because they're a much smaller plane. So it doesn't take as much to turn and pivot, and definitely more agile in our smaller businesses. And really, one of the things you touched on again, which I think is really important, is it's really the small things, the little things, and the big businesses are realizing that's what matters, and our small businesses are already doing that. So I think it. Yeah, just validates that our small businesses are in the right place, doing the right thing, and building those relationships, those little moments, the moments of truth, and the little things they're doing to make things a little bit more personal.
Yeah, and Felicia, don't ever think just because a large company can do something that small companies can't. And let me give you an example. Some large businesses are very good at getting customers to write positive reviews that are verified, post them on their site. And there's a lot of research out there that says if you get a certain number of reviews on your site, you're going to grow your business. So in the local sense, one of the things that local businesses can do to make it easy for the customer is, instead of relying on them to write the review, is have a little checklist at checkout, or when they're paying their bill at a restaurant, and ask maybe 2 or 3 quick questions, and ask that customer for a quote about their experience if it was a good experience. If it wasn't a good experience, you don't have to post that, but you should learn from it and say, hey, look, it doesn't look like we're doing this right, or maybe this person was just angry. But those that are positive, if you take the onus off the customer and say, may we post this, you can get positive posts up in time for the holidays. And that can help build the business. And that's by simply taking all of the friction away from the customer, putting it onto yourself for maximum benefit for the local merchant.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it almost makes me think like these small things we should be doing all year round. So next time when we're gearing up for holiday season, we already have all the reviews, and we have our website updated, and we have the family plans and different offerings that you had talked about. So yeah, great.
We're actually creating a playbook for that for as we go along this first year. It'll just continue to add based on innovation, based on the contributions and the innovations your local merchants make for the benefit of all.
Great. So were there any questions? I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A, but I'll give folks another minute if they wanted to ask Mike something. He has lots of years of experience. So if you have questions just specific about the holiday season or just general marketing and best practices, then Mike's your guy. So while you think about if you have any questions, I'm going to ask my final question of Mike. And that is, after today's session, what do you want people to take away from? Like, what advice and parting words of wisdoms do you want people to remember leaving here today?
Know that your customers are your key to success. And the more you know them, the stronger you build a relationship with them, the more they trust you and your employees, the better they feel about what you do, the more business you're going to get, and the longer they're going to be a customer. That takes work, and that takes time. The interesting thing is, those are the things that are really hurting the bigger businesses and the online businesses today. The lack of human contact, the lack of emotional support and recognition, the fact that they can't solve problems the way a local merchant can. And so leverage that, and know that you can make many of your customers an extension of your brand. And what we call, whether it's a brand activist or a merchant activist, somebody that doesn't just advocate on the merchant's behalf, but actively works to help it grow through all the tools and mechanisms individuals have today, through social media, by writing reviews, by referring friends and family. There's so much more a customer can do to add value to a business today that goes well beyond a simple purchase. And loyalty programs and traditional promotions really don't cover that. And that's one of the big reasons we built the Dublin Marketplace powered by Reach Places. Is we want to make sure that we make the city of Dublin as successful as it can be by having customers and merchants work together for mutual benefit.
No, those are some great points. And in the chat, we got a question: was there some meeting on Tuesday night? Because earlier I referenced Tuesday night. Last Tuesday night, October 18th, was our city council meeting, and that's when the city officially entered into an agreement with Reach to get this marketplace up and running. So we're excited that we already had this scheduled, because then we're able to share the news that this is a platform we're moving forward with, and we'll be working on getting up and running. Starting now, with plans to get it up by early December. Are there any other questions? Yang, I see your hands up. I'm not sure if you wanted to. Let's see, Yang sent something over to us. I'll read it for the group. So I have a newsletter group that I notice is extremely engaged in opening my newsletter, greater than 60% open rates. Wow, that's really impressive.
That is impressive.
However, my attempts to have a conversation do not seem to be working. Do you have suggestions for how to get more engaged with newsletter subscribers so it's not just a one-way conversation? I often invite people to email me, but very few ever do. And this is a great question, because I have the same question when we're reaching out to our business community. So the information is being well received, sounds like very engaging newsletter, but how do you get that two-way conversation and get folks to reach out?
So I wish I could give you a silver bullet answer for this, but it really depends on the subject matter of the newsletter and what kind of response or how you want to engage people in conversation. There are certain incentives that work. It doesn't have to be a monetary incentive. Oftentimes people want to be heard, and they want to know they're being heard. The other times they want to be recognized. And so there are strings you can pull if you want people to respond to you, and then get them involved in the kind of dialogue that can be extremely productive. And those are the people that become your strongest advocates and the extensions of your brand. So what we could offer is looking at the newsletters in question and how you want people to respond. And we can come up with some ideas for you about how we can make them do that. And then obviously once the Reach or the Dublin Marketplace is deployed, we can systematically help you do that through our unique incentive system.
Great. Yeah, I think incentives definitely a way. And then, yeah, it helps once we have a little bit more information about what exactly the situation is. But I think that's some good general advice. And I would just add that making things as simple as possible for people to engage. On the city side, we're working on some new programs, and what's in the back of our mind is our business owners are so swamped. They are their chief of marketing, they are their chief operations, and they're bringing customers up. So how can we make it very easy for folks to engage, participate? One click, we'll reach out. And so I think that hopefully that's helpful as well, or that's what we're looking to do here, kind of on our end as we're marketing our programs and different offerings.
Yeah, it's the same for priority communications, right? It's not just a newsletter. If you have something that you need all the residents to read because it's important, it's about disaster recovery. It might be about something that's, it might be about the pandemic, whatever that might be. There's a way of training people to saying, hey, look, if this comes with this kind of mechanism, I need to read it, because not only do I need to read it, but there's something in it for me for reading it. So, and we've talked a lot about that. And so we have some ideas that might be able to help.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. Are there any other questions from those that are joining us?
I thought I saw one about what is a marketplace.
Oh, what is the marketplace? Oh yeah, sorry, missed over that. So do you want to take that, or do you want me to try to take a stab at it?
Why don't you go ahead and then I'll follow up if necessary.
Yeah, sounds good. So the Dublin Marketplace, we're considering it. It's really this app, and it's going to have our local merchants. Not everyone. It's going to be specific categories, because of course it doesn't make sense for someone that doesn't have uh, like retail customers, right? So if they sell to other businesses, like then those businesses probably won't be in this marketplace, but it'll be a collection of local merchants that are on this app. You can go and visit these establishments and get some Dublin dollars, and you can use those Dublin dollars and other participating Dublin merchant places. And so really the marketplace is referring to the app, but as Mike mentioned, there's a lot kind of going on in the back end. But this marketplace will allow individuals in the city to earn dollars by spending dollars locally. And so that's like a super basic. And let's see, will the marketplace be applicable for online only businesses, or do you have to have a retail physical space? So right now we're currently working out some of those details, what it will look like. I think our initial thoughts are it makes sense for those that have a retail physical space. So I can go into Mimi's Chocolates and I can purchase items there, right? So we're still kind of working out those details. On our website, we do have a form. And if you're interested, I can go ahead and put it in the chat. There's a form, so if you're interested in learning more about the marketplace, when we have additional updates regarding the program and more of that specific criteria, then you'll be notified. So you'll be on our mailing list for the marketplace program. Let's see, Mike, is there anything you wanted to add about the specific the marketplace? And it's not a physical place, it's kind of this online app, right?
Right. The reason we chose a marketplace over a standard program is because marketplaces enable both sides of the market, in this case, the customer and the merchant, to engage as equals. In every other scenario, you either have the merchant, the customer subordinated to the merchant, or with a lot of these cashback and like Rakuten programs, you have the merchants subordinated to the customer and the platform, and there's no flexibility. So a marketplace allows the two to work together on equal terms. It facilitates the partnership, and each still controls the elements that are really important to them. So the customer controls the merchants they want to work with, how they want to work with the merchants, how proactively, they want to become involved. And on the merchant side, the merchant decides what they want from the customer, how, and then what compensation to provide them, thereby guaranteeing their ROI. We've developed an incentive system that also then provides the instant gratification that customers want, with the control that merchants need to make it economically viable. And so a customer doesn't get paid until they've added value, and they can only use what they earn within the group of merchants that are participating in the marketplace. So every penny that is paid has to be reinvested back into the businesses that paid it collectively. And that creates the system that not only provides self-sustainability, but ensures that every penny that's paid is invested back into the marketplace to help it grow.
Yeah, thank you so much for expanding on that and the marketplace and the concept. And as you were explaining that, I was picturing like the 1600s, where you go into this like big open space where there's all these vendors and markets, and you go and pick your produce and your different items up. And I think that's kind of what we're going for, but albeit in a electronic kind of version. But how can we create that space where there's relationships and there's buying from one place and then giving to the neighbor, and kind of just keeping that atmosphere going? So yeah, thank you for expanding on that.
As a matter of fact, this concept started exactly as you described it. It was originally a co-op, back in many years ago. It started as a farmers co-op. Farmers co-op, believe it or not, turned into credit unions. And that was how credit unions got started. And credit unions were the foundation for two-sided marketplaces.
Awesome. Yeah, great kind of connection. And I think this, yeah, is taking it back to basics, like that's how our economy developed. And now we're kind of going back to that just in kind of a new innovative way via the Dublin marketplace powered by Reach Places. So let's see. Are there any other questions? I appreciate everyone who took the time to join us. We will be having future webinars. Our next one is scheduled for November 17th. We'll be sending information out about that. It'll be about defining your brand, and so more around marketing your business. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. And so with that, thank you all for joining us. We will be in touch, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or if you have ideas for future webinars or other programs we could be doing to support our local business community. Thank you all again, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, everybody.